What's up, everybody? Just a special note for this episode. My homeboy, friend, buddy, pal, whatever you want to call him, Derek Miner, worked on an instrumental release over the pandemic, and it is pretty rad. Taking a little break from the PWNA music, and we are kicking it Derek Miner through the whole thing. The new Derek Miner, you may already know this, but the theme song is by Derek Miner. So special shout outs to Derek Miner. How many more times can I say Derek Miner in this little Derek Miner ad? Go check out Derek Miner and all of his stuff, and go check out this album. It's actually called Nolan and Zane's Lo-Fi Adventures. Hell yeah. Enjoy the show. Basically, we talked about the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, and I'm not going to get into my opinions about it now. We'll wrap up. Y'all introduced yourself with 2 sentences. I want y'all to close with 2 thoughts on Chris Rock getting bitch slapped by Will Smith.
2 thoughts? Oh my God.
What's up, pals? Have y'all ever heard of scrupulosity? It's a real word, and it's a real mental condition. It's a mixture of OCD, anxiety, and religiosity. It is a scientific term. Wrote a book, actually, on my experience of having it. Well, I tell a story in this episode, and it is just so cringy to even talk about, but it's scrupulosity, man. It's like I was going over the edge with the scrupulosity. So we also continue the conversation. You are not going to believe, if you listen to the last episode about me trying to cheat Walmart out of money, apparently, if you listen to that, you'll not believe the email that I got right after that talk. And then what happened? It's a whole thing. So we continue that conversation here. Guys, I love you. And reach out. I'd like to hear from you, and enjoy the show. I want to start off with telling you guys kind of a funny story, and then I'll tell you at the end why I'm telling you this. So y'all know a lot of my background with being super OCD, and then in my childhood, very much so legalistic and pretty much in bondage to a lot of unhealthy stuff. I had this, I look back now and I feel so bad for little Joey. I would obsessively pray salvation prayers just constantly because I thought I wasn't saying the words right, or I thought maybe God didn't hear me. And I'm telling you, it would spike sometimes. And so I was in, I will never live this down. It's like, I never talked to this guy, but I will never live it down in my mind. So we're in German class. We've got these gigantic headphones on, and we're all listening to the German instruction, and we all have our headphones on. And so I just instinctively realized that everybody has headphones on. I can pray some of these obsessive prayers and just kind of pray them out loud. And so I basically like, Lord, please forgive me. I mean, it's this crazy stuff. Like, it's crazy for me to even say this. So I'm saying these prayers out loud, and I happen to turn around, and pot smoking, hippie, geek, nerdy, like, just he makes straight F's, totally is not wearing his headphones. And listen, I'm not exaggerating. He looked scared. He didn't look like, I hear this. He looked scared. And the reason I bring that up is, right. I met him later because now he's like a computer geek that works with a really good friend of mine. And I met him at a party, and I'm thinking, I remember him from high school. He says he doesn't remember me from high school, but it may be because he does remember me, and he's not bringing anything up.
He's scared of you.
Yeah, but he died.
Right.
He died a few days ago, so that's why I brought that up.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah,
Way
he's
to
dead.
Crash
He's
that.
right.
down.
How did you can just add that at the end?
So yeah, I've got a question.
So quick. Like,
I can do that because I don't know him, and I do care. When I found out, I was like, whoa, but I literally don't have any relationship with this guy, except I said obsessive prayers out loud in a classroom and almost drove him to madness, probably out of fear.
Right. So you either evangelized or you completely freaked him out.
Right. Hey, if that guy goes to hell, would God really blame him?
Right.
I mean, he could say, look, I was thinking about giving my heart to Christ, but I was sitting in German class one day.
It's like, there's this guy in front of me.
I mean, God would have to have mercy on that. Holy cow. All right, so I want to tie up a couple of loose ends so we can, I can move on. Like, there's things that I just get in my head, and I'm like, I joked around with the former gay pastor that was on this past episode, and I said, when I'm a grandpa, like, people are literally going to either stop listening to Pastor with No Answers or listen and laugh because I'm telling the same stuff just over and over and over. But I'll catch you guys up because y'all haven't heard the last episode yet, and I'll try to make it snappy. But I was shocked because I had lunch with two college buddies a couple days ago, and one of my friends, he's a Christian, but I mean, he's like a super, like, not legalistic or anything. He was, in a friend sort of way, appalled by this. And I was surprised. I was like, I can see you being in disagreement, but I don't think it's a big deal. Maybe everybody's going to think it's a big deal. But I basically, I got two scooters for the boys. One of them became defected. I called Walmart up. I said, I need to get a new scooter. It was a very good brand. Just happened to get it through Walmart. They said, we'll send the new scooter. You put the old scooter in the new box. Send it back. We're good. Scooter came, and I said, I'm going to take the time to package this old scooter up that still works somewhat. I mean, it definitely is worth bringing back. It just shuts down, but it's still somewhat functional. I'm going to send this thing back. It's going to end up in a warehouse. It's not going to be touched. It's already banged up a little bit. No one's going to do anything about it. So I was telling Ryan and Ellen, and Ryan's basically saying, dude, you're not going to get away with it. And he's like, I don't even care about the moral implications. Like, you can't run a business that way. And so when I got off that call, I was thinking, Ryan's right. Now, like, I'm not going to get out of this. So they basically, I'm telling you, right after that conversation, I checked my email right afterwards, and it was an email from Walmart saying, we're sorry we didn't get your scooter, so we're charging a credit card. So I'm like, dang it, they're right. And so I checked my credit card statement just to see when it would pop up. It never popped up, and it just hit me, guys. I had lost my credit card in the time being and got a replacement. So they tried to use my old credit card. They weren't able to charge it. I'm going to lose listeners when I say it just doesn't bother me. I'm still kind of struggling with it, especially with John's reaction. But here's what I said to John. This is my friend who was kind of like, dude, you call yourself a Christian sort of thing. I said, all right, this is a sliding scale sort of deal. If you go to CVS and they hand you a $10 bill, you get in the car realizing it should have been a $5 bill, but you realize that 30 miles down the road in rush hour traffic. Are you going to turn around and return that money, or are you ever going to go back? And I know some people will, but some people are going to be like, I just don't have the time. If I saw this in the parking lot, I would have gone right back in, made it right. I'm not making a special trip. They can cough up the $5. Do y'all think I'm horrible?
So clarifying. So you bought two scooters. One was defective, and instead of returning the defective one, they sent you a new one, but you kept the defective one,
right?
Because they weren't going to do anything with it.
Right. And if this was like an Etsy order, someone who's hustling to make a living, totally not going to take this approach. Yeah. Now, John and Ben said basically, though, that Walmart's not the one that's getting hurt. It's the scooter company, which that does make me feel a little bit different, even though it's probably a $1 billion company. I think what I wanted to make my friend John admit is there's certain things, smaller scale, that you would justify along these lines. You just don't like it because it was a scooter. Like, it was kind of a bigger deal. All I can think about is the inconvenience. They didn't send a shipping label, so I have to go to the post office. Like, I'm freaking 4 kids, tons of stuff going on. I don't want to mess with this.
Right.
Matt, you don't even believe in God, but you're probably going to say, Joey, you did the wrong thing, though.
No, not at all. I honestly, the only victim in that situation is the kid who had to mine the lithium to make the battery for the scooter. So steal from Walmart. I don't care. Go for it. Please.
Oh,
there is no ethical consumption.
So with that attitude, can I just shoplift from Walmart then?
If you need to survive, do it. It's probably going to come to that for a lot of people really soon. Like, people are going to need to do that with the way things are going.
All right, Robbie, hurt my heart. One of my closest friends. Go ahead and disciple me.
I kind of get where you're coming from. In some cases, I would probably check and see if they actually weren't going to fix that scooter up and resell it.
Yeah.
Versus like if you were to take a meal from a place, like they obviously can't use that food anymore.
Right.
You know, so sometimes they'll be like, just keep it. We can't
Right.
do anything with it. We're just going to throw it away. But like, I don't think that works with everything. You know, like if you got a car and the car was defective,
Right.
they're giving you another one. Like,
Right.
You know,
Right.
So I think, you know, I guess it does really depend on kind of the object, and then I would say how you feel about it. But I don't think what you did was illegal. I think it was just store policy.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I mean, here's another example of something that I'm kind of these to me are legalism territories, and for some people they may be like real black and white moral territories. But if I know that I accidentally left something out of my taxes and I probably made $20 because I left it out, I'm not going to resubmit my taxes, and I'm not like, ooh, I got $20 from the government. I just don't care. Yeah. What I think is hilarious too is if you ever need the IRS's help, it's like impossible to get in touch with them. They just send you a letter and you've got to act or you're going to get screwed. That's the sort of territory I put this in, is who cares about the scooter? Nobody cares. And it's just a hassle. But I think honestly, and this is the beauty of community, after talking to so many people, I'll at least make a phone call and tell them the situation and basically say, if you send a box with a shipping label, I'll send it back.
If you do the work for me, then I'll return the scooter that I promised to return you before.
They sent me defective scooter. They started this, Robbie. They started it. I didn't start this.
Now you're the victim.
All they had to do was send me a scooter that my son would enjoy. Kind of giving an ad here. We're gonna I don't know what we're gonna call it, but we're having PWNA Ladies Edition. Basically, the concept is that if there is a dude on the show, he will always be the odd man out. I thought to myself, I already have some really dynamic female friends that come on here, but then I have a lot that don't. So I'm going to try to make that happen. So we had a conversation the other night. Basically, we talked about the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, and I'm not going to get into my opinions about it now. We'll wrap up. Y'all introduced yourself with 2 sentences. I want y'all to close with 2 thoughts on Chris Rock getting bitch slapped by Will Smith.
2 thoughts. Oh my God.
All right. How about this? Make it snappy.
I just appreciated the form, not necessarily that he did it. And I don't really have an opinion outside of that. Like, it was a good slap. I kind of feel like he might have got his fingertips, so he could have been off a little. I didn't hear enough of a smack like you want to hear. But otherwise, it was good form.
Definitely, he planted and swung and followed through. He also blocked with his other hand. So I was like, man.
He was ready.
Good technique.
Robbie, and part of the purpose of having these weekly host recordings is to do stuff like this. I've talked to someone that's made this even a racial issue, saying that it's a poor reflection to the black community. But I'm like, you're white and you're critiquing 2 black guys for what they're doing to their community. The person would probably retract that statement. But Robbie, I'll just ask you, when you see this, when I see this, and I hate even saying this because I don't think it's but maybe this is my white privilege. I see one buddy that went up on stage and slapped his buddy for saying something that offended him about his wife. I don't see 2 black dudes doing it. It's just 2 dudes doing it. Like, what's the racial stuff around this?
Man, I think there's so many dynamics at play, and I would say, so like that event was mixed race. There was different ethnicities represented in the event. And so, but I would say, coming from a black perspective, a lot of times you are under a spotlight and scrutiny in situations like that because comments like that are going to come behind it. So if something happens, it's almost like you have to be on your best behavior, or white America is going to say that, oh, it's just the black people doing the black thing again, or something is going to be heavier. And I think when I heard some of that about Will, I thought, that's not fair to put all of black America on Will Smith's one emotional response in the middle of an event. That, like, the reality is that if you went in front, for example, like if Priscilla and you were at PTA
meeting.
Yeah, a PTA meeting, or even, I would say even more than that, something that you guys worked your whole life to be at and respected in front of all of your colleagues, and somebody verbally bashed her about something about her physically, and it wasn't the first time that it did it, like, you'd probably be upset about it. If you were out in the street, if you were out in a bar, you might have had a response to it. Now I think personally Will should have used his words and not his hands for sure. But at the same time, I don't think it was a racial thing at all. I also think it was just inappropriate. I think that essentially speaking, the comedians do playful banter. You can roast people, but when it comes to like physical roasting of people, I think that's where it kind of crossed the line unless you have gotten the approval from that person that it's okay in front of all those other people. If not, then it's just kind of bullying.
When I watch you on Twitter or just see how you handle yourself or listen to how you interact, I'm like, yeah, we're on the same page. I mean, I can tell, but I'm still curious. All this deconstruction stuff, peers of ours that are just in a completely different place or not even a Christian altogether. So I'm really curious about your journey. But before we do that, we cannot break tradition. I do have one hip hop question.
All right. Let's go.
I don't understand J. Cole. I've got a playlist of tons of my favorite hip hop songs. We're talking, 30 Kendrick Lamar, 60 Kanye. I mean, I could go on and on, all the indie, deeper stuff that I listen to. There is hardly any J. Cole. And dude, the last thing I'm doing is criticizing someone else's art. Like, I'm sure it's beautiful, but I don't understand. When I listen to J. Cole and then when I listen to Kendrick, it does sound to my novice ears that they're on different planets. But I would also imagine J. Cole is writing whatever the hell kind of hip hop that he wants to. And so it's not an artistic criticism, but I don't think he's as good as like Kendrick. As I'm saying this, I'm like, should I have even brought this up? I sound like some arrogant punk little white boy who doesn't even do hip hop.
I think J. Cole is the biggest indie artist to ever exist. J. Cole is the biggest niche rapper to ever make it. Like, that's what.
See, I'm all ears, man. I got to hear this.
He's like Nas. Like, he's like Nas in the sense of, like, J. Cole is not trying to give you hits. J. Cole's not even, I don't even think J. Cole's necessarily trying to, I don't think J. Cole cares about anything other than writing what's on his heart. That's why it connects with people. He's not trying to give you this great, I mean, he's giving you great art. He's not Kendrick, which is this far out artistic guy. He's not Drake, which is a commercial money music machine. J. Cole is making music for the average person. Like, J. Cole makes music for me. I'm from black culture. I'm from the hood, but I wasn't no gangster. I wasn't shooting at nobody. Like, I wasn't selling dope. None of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's making music for the average black experience, which is a good thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's why, you know, like, Kendrick is making music for art aficionados. Yeah. Drake is making music for club and for parties. J. Cole is making music for just the average black dude. I
love talk. I think I listen to so much hip hop that I rarely get into more of the story, and so I love hearing that. That's like, I just never knew that. And just so podcasting's a weird thing. I feel like I'm just talking to a friend. Obviously, a lot of people are gonna listen to this, but I would never go out and be any sort of critic of J. Cole's albums or blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not where I'm coming from. But you nailed it. It really does seem like what Kendrick Lamar offers is like this masterpiece. It's epic. You're like, I don't even know like where that came from. That may not be what people are so in love with J. Cole about. It seems like they're more in love with the guy.
I think Cole is very similar to Pac in the sense of Pac would go in the studio and he's just telling you his heart and his feeling. There's people that's like, oh, Pac wasn't a better rapper than Biggie. And it's like, well, we didn't love Pac because he was a better rapper than Biggie. We love Pac because Pac was telling our story, right? Wow. That's why we love Pac. Pac, we look at Pac and we like that. We felt like we could reach out and touch Pac even though none of us never met him. And that's the appeal of Cole. Cole is like, I can touch. Like, I feel like Cole is like a cousin. Like, I feel like Cole like one of my cousins. And I think that if that experience is not going to be for everybody, but it's for a lot of people. Like, when you look at his platform, I mean, he has to be on the Mount Rushmore of that generation. You know what I mean? Right. And that's why he's on there. He's sandwiched between Jay-Z, Kanye, 3 6 Mafia, and Bun B and like he's like sandwiched like right in the middle. Like he is like the center ground of the Black experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's it's just me.
What was the album with it? It seems like a little statue with a crown on it. I forgot what.
Born Sinner.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think it's the first song, the sort of stuff that he says to the gay community. I think he's had to kind of circle back around and it's just kind of some brutal lingo, just apologize.
There's a lot of people that's had to circle back around.
I know.
Apologize. Or you, Dave Chappelle, you double down and say, I said what I said. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Hey, I was in Southern Cal with the family, and as some of my kids were shopping with mom, I bought a Time magazine on Tupac, and I thought this was so cool. It just popped in my head that they asked him one time, who's your favorite comedian? And not even a thought, he said Jim Carrey. And they kind of asked him why so fast. Jim Carrey wrote him, I'm pretty sure, like every single week that he was in jail or just something like that. It's just kind of neat. Like two guys that are some of my favorites, like hearing little stories like that behind the scenes is kind of neat. My second question before we move into a bunch of Jesus and God talk is I really did have to think this through. And I was like, if I get an opportunity, like I asked a buddy, an old worship leader friend of mine, what he thought. So there's a local Charleston hip hop guy. Basically, I just worked out a little deal, and my brother inserts a song at the end. That guy uses the N-word. So basically the podcast would wrap up. Hey, so thanks for listening. Joey's fencing, blah, blah, blah. Music comes up. 3 seconds into it, a Black MC says the word, the N-word. Am I in the clear? Did I do something wrong? I actually decided against it. I was like, maybe that's not even my word to play. And I'm not being jokey. Like, I'm really trying to think of what it's like not to be in my shoes.
Honestly, I think you got to play it smart. It's just, is it worth it? That's really the main question. For me, it wouldn't have been worth it for me. It's just worth it. I mean, like you look at Joe Rogan in the sense where Joe Rogan is like, yo, I'm not calling somebody that, I'm just saying the word. And it's like, well, in hindsight, it's like, was it worth it?
Right.
No, I probably wasn't. Probably should have just played the safer route with that word. It's the same thing I feel like with the gay community. It's just like, some stuff is just like, it's not worth addressing. It's like, or if no one benefits from me just using this, what's the point of saying it? Right. So that's my perspective now. That's where I'm like, yo, is it worth it?
It's funny. Like, I think the 60-year-old version is going to look back at 40-year-old version of Joey Smith and be like, that dude's a dumbass. Like, he thought he was smart. And that's kind of how I feel about 20-year-old version of Joey. I want to focus this. It's kind of funny. Sometimes I'll have an episode idea pop up in my head, and I literally wrote down the faith of Derek Minor. Seriously, I was like, I love this guy, and I don't really know where he's at in his faith. I don't know if he would say, like, have you ever had a faith crisis? I think some people confuse faith crisis with sometimes people who just discover the church is full of shit crisis. But did you ever have a faith crisis? Am I deconstructing? Like, take us back to how faith was even introduced to you. Did you grow up in a Christian household, mom and dad together?
Yeah, I grew up. My mom is one of the strongest Christians I know to this day. Like, she loves the Lord.
Would she ever come on this podcast? I'm being serious. Like, I would love to learn from.
You would make her day by asking her to come on this podcast. I would love it. She would make her day. I could text her right now.
I would absolutely love it. You know how awesome it would be to have more people like our parents' age on this show. Nobody asks, but hell yeah, let's do that yesterday.
Do it in a heartbeat, bro.
And you can even say, hey, my friend just wants to know what's on your heart. And just let her go.
My mom has zero problems telling you what she thinks. She is not shy at all. Joyce gonna let you know. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, I grew up, and she instilled a lot of faith principles in me. So I hate the word like deconstruction.
Right.
Because it implies that something was either completed or finished. And I just don't think our faith is finished. Like, it's not finished until we're gone. we're still in the race. So like, I hate the idea that we love to Christians specifically love to categorize everything. It's just
we love coming up with nicknames. We can't even really just call it what it is. We have to come up with a nickname for it.
Has to go in a bucket. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, why is everyone confused that people who have seen racist people in the name of Christ do evil things? You've seen leaders that are Christians fall. Why would you be surprised that people would be second guessing or trying to unravel the web that's in their brain? Like, that shouldn't even be surprising. That's a very human thing.
And then you may start doing the history. It's like, oh, well, I bet you the roots are good.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh shoot, that didn't work either.
Roots are worse than I thought, right? So, but they're not dead. So that's just where they're at now. And even I see the danger even in the deconstruction crowd. For a lot of people, they're like, oh, all right, I've deconstructed. I've deconstructed out of that phase. And then the worst thing you can do is just build those same static pillars in your deconstruction.
Right.
Like, for me, I'm just kind of like, I know that I love people. I know that there has to be, in my opinion, there's a God. Now, how all of that works, I don't know. And you know what? I don't know if I'll ever know. I don't fully know, right?
Yeah.
I know a little bit. Even the Bible says you know in part and prophesy in part, right? So it's like, that's not, the Bible didn't set us up for failure if you believe the scriptures, right? So it's like, you're not supposed to know everything. It's the same way I feel with my kids. With my kids, I'm just like, yo, they're like, if I say go clean your room and they're like, why? I just cleaned it yesterday. I don't care. You don't have to know why I said do it. Go do what I said do. Right. I think it's the same thing with faith. Like, humans are arrogant, man. We want every answer. We want to know everything. But the reality of it is, we're just not going to know everything about faith, religion, God, people. We're just not. So I'm content with saying, I don't know. I'm just going to try and do my best. And that's where I've landed.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. My wife, faith was never problematic for her. It was always something that kind of added to her life. It was always like a healthy thing. For me, it was so much unhealthiness, stuff that I've needed therapy for years. I'm thinking that maybe for you, deconstruction, because I don't like the tag words either, but for me, that makes sense to like have a word where I cross the line in being able to say, hey, I'm raising my hand. I think this stuff is unhealthy. Like I've crossed that line, because that's a big deal in the sort of circles that I grew up in. You don't question what you're being. That's why we believe what we believe about scriptures, because of what man taught.
I think the more rigid your upbringing was. I remember when I first started hanging around a lot of evangelicals, when I started doing music, they would make a law out of everything. Like, everything was God said you can't do this. God said you can't do that. And my mom we grew up oneness Pentecostal.
Right.
So, but me personally, to a degree, I always was able to buck the thing. Like, for me, if something doesn't make sense, it's hard for me to adopt it. Yeah. Right. It's hard for me to blindly say, okay, this doesn't make, even if I do it for a little while, I'll wrestle, and eventually I just start throwing stuff out and just, that doesn't make sense to me right now. But for people that just were like blindly like, yo, these things have to be right in order for God to be real, they're having a really hard time now. Like, I didn't even understand like the whole purity culture thing until I talked to someone who was raised in purity culture. Then I was like, oh, okay. Now I see why there's a big rebellion against it, where you like have to put your stamp in the ground, because a lot of that was abusive, and it was things that was crazy, right? Same thing I think with a lot of people who are deconstructing now. When I look at them and I look at a lot of their stories, the consistency in their stories is, it's like, here's what being a good person is. And I think you see a lot of that amongst white Bible Belt Christians, because they were told, if you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you are good and accepted. That's kind of hard to deal with in this climate. Like, that's a hard thing. Where we grew up, everybody was down bad. So like, none of us had an arrogance about us that would make us say, well, some people did, but I think, a lot of us didn't. We all knew they can't really be too act like they're too good, because their son is doing drugs, and their son's selling drugs, and she's this and that. It's like all of our sin was really in front of us. So my relationship with God was more like, God, I need you to help me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like I have to do these rules in order to be accepted,
Yeah.
and I'll be treated like a good person, right?
Yeah.
When no one treats you like a good person, you're just like, man, I'm just in desperate need of God. You know what I mean? But I've also had to deconstruct, if that's the word we're using. I've had to go in and wrestle with things. But I think that's normal. I think that's healthy. I think that's life. I think that's human. I don't think that should be ran from. I think we should run to it.
Here's how corrupt my mind was when it came to how I saw God at first. Like you basically said you pursued God from a God, I need you. I need your help. My thing was, God, I need you to save me from the hell that I think you want to send me to. Like, what do I have to do? It really affects the trajectory of your faith from that point on. Like, I will always need to keep that part of my mind in check. We are all doing the best we can. We're all going to screw up. But that's something that I've really appreciated as I get older, is how I view humanity. It's like we are all so lost, and that's wisdom to be able to see that. Like, we're just all trying the best we can to be able to wrestle with the tension of DMX's greatness and the fact that he had an addiction, for instance. Like, to be able to wrestle with and don't say either or. That's been, I think, the beauty of growing up a little bit for me. And it sounds all lining up with the beautiful part of Christianity that I think is true. So when it comes to your deconstruction, I know for me, I could say definitely yes. Are there things that you believe now or don't believe now that 10 years ago you would have thought that you're like Derek Minor of 2022 is a heretic?
Nah, not really.
What are some of the big ones? Like, if you had some big things that shifted, what would those be?
The biggest thing that I'm trying to wrestle with, I never was the person that's like, that person's a heretic.
Right.
I like, that never was the thing for me, which was the theology fights and all those things. Those were never a thing for me. Well, if you look at this and that, I tell you, but I won't say it was never a thing for me. It was a thing for me for probably like a year and a half. I would say, like, when I first got introduced to that world, and then I started looking, I'm like, I don't know about that one. Because like when I first started rapping with Reach, it was all about Calvinist Rap stuff or whatever. But then, I remember, I remember what made me abandon that. I'll never forget abandoning. What made me abandon that? Everybody was like, yo, you got to start listening to John Piper. So I remember we actually was on tour. We visited John Piper's ministry or whatever, and they gave me a bunch of DVDs. Them joints are still wrapped up in plastic right now. Like, I watched one of them. I watched that when I was like, I wasn't connecting. I was trying, though, because I'm like, I'm trying to be the good guy, right? And I remember I saw the sermon where Paul Washer said, anybody that is in prosperity gospel or charismatic, he was like, they're going to hell. It was a crazy clip. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, well, you can't tell me Miss Jenkins is going to hell, because Miss Jenkins, every crackhead she feed, every crackhead come to the crib. She got people sleeping on her floor. Yep. You gonna eat at Miss Jenkins' crib. She pray for you when you hurting. She at every funeral consoling people that's lost somebody. You can't tell me that woman going to hell because she don't understand, or that she doesn't comprehend some academic thing that you feel like you comprehend. That some Anglo-Saxon dude is trying to break down something from Africa from thousands of years ago, and you feel like you figured it out. Right. So like for me, I was like, you know what? Nah, this ain't for me. Like, that's not my space. I think the thing that I have wrestled with is trying to parse together, like, what are we doing now? Like, what's the point of this? Like, when I look at the churches in the Bible, it was more about community. It was more about helping people, and it was less organized and less of a show. So like for me, I wrestle with, where is my place in the church? Like, where do I belong? What community looks like an actual church? And then also knowing that for some people, these organized places are beneficial and they're helping them, right? So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's me living in a level of nuance that it's a struggle. Like, I mean, just being honest, like, it's a struggle, especially when you've seen behind the curtain of so many different churches and movements and know so many people. Like, it's really hard to separate the service they're providing from them sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. You know what amazes me, once you're far enough along I can admit that I really don't know what's going on. I know maybe 0.5% or 0.05% of what's going on with God. You listen to someone like John Piper and you're like, how the hell do you know all this stuff? Like, seriously, like, how are you talking so authoritatively about the one that created you and never didn't exist? Like, where are you even starting from a place of understanding? It just blows my mind, because not only does he understand God, he understands how God operates. He understands how God does everything. I'm like, wow, that's really shocking that you know so much. And I'm coming across, it sounds very insulting and arrogant. I don't mean it to sound that way, but it really does sound shocking now. Right.
And I think the thing that happens, in order to have, now I can't talk about Piper. I don't even know him like that. But what I've noticed with a lot of people, in order to have that level of conviction about everything, is you have to overlook so much stuff.
Yeah.
You have to say, I only see this one path, and I overlook the inconsistencies of other paths. So now what I try to do is I try to say, hey, this is what I think this means.
Right.
This is my best interpretation of that. There are other interpretations. You have to do your best and look at this as best you can,
right,
and see where you land. But this is where I've landed on the subject. Or if I haven't landed on the subject, I'm like, I'm still computing right now. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that we find a lot of fear in that, in not being able to deliver an answer. But sometimes, but I don't find any fear in that, because I also don't see myself as someone who has to have the answers. Like I don't have to have them.
So when you think through your music career, I was thinking about Derek Miner's art from a long time ago and art now. It's so neat because, like, I feel like on a lot lower artistic level, this is what I'm doing with podcasting. I mean, when people listen to Joey Svensson of Bad Christian in 2014, I mean, they're just like, oh my gosh, that dude has like really changed a whole lot. And that's not for show. That's just the reality of having a podcast like this. But I would say even more so in your lyrics. And I'm curious, do you ever look back on your art that was coming from your heart and maybe cringe at something that you say or how you said it? Or can you put it all into context? I've heard some people say, I don't want to get a tattoo and regret it. And then other people I've heard say, well, just get a tattoo and it just represents that time of your life. Like, how do you reflect on your lyrics? Was there anything that you ever look at and you're like, oh, wow, I wouldn't have said it that way?
Yeah, yes and no. I hate some of the arrogance of my lyrics in many directions, in the sense of saying, I just hate some of the arrogance of my lyrics. Like not, and when I say arrogant, not bragging on my ability, but making such bold statements about things I had no clue about, that someone just had told me and I believed it. But then at the same time, that got me here. If anything, I can use that as an example to say, like, hey, that's why I say, like, when we talk about faith, it's moving. It's never ending. It's never finishing. So I've embraced the fact that me at this age, mid-30s, I'm probably gonna think a lot different in mid-40s.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's okay. It's just a placeholder, right? Like these records are just like, hey, this is a point in time in my life. But I do cringe at certain things that I said that might be offensive to people. Because that's never been my heart. You know, if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have been as offensive, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's what bothers me about, that's the biggest thing that bothers me about cancel culture is you can literally cancel someone who learned from their mistake and moved on with their life. Like, it's like, come on, you're canceling what being human is. Like, you can't cancel the very fabric of who we are, man, as mistake prone people in this world of crazy polarity. I mean, it's unprecedented. I don't think any of us have seen it like this. What does it mean to be a Christian in 2022 in the United States of America?
Blessed are the peacemakers. blessed are the humble. Like Beatitudes, man. Like cats got to get back to the basics. People arguing over masks and vaccines and Ukraine and Russia and I'm like, man, how in the hell did y'all go from just? I mean, you can't be an expert about every damn thing. You're an expert about the nuclear stuff happening in Ukraine and expert military strategist. And now you are an expert epidemiologist with vaccines and expert like, it's like, blessed are the peacemakers. Like God, I think called us to, I think we have a lot of people have a wrong idea of what being a light is. Like there's a difference between a light that illuminates a room and a laser. They're both light. A laser could harm you in a devastating way. And I think that's why God talks about that his children should be wise as serpents, but gentle as doves. Like that's what being a light is. That's the type of light you should be. Nobody likes a laser pointed in their eye.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of Christians are. That's why people are deconstructed. I think that's why a lot of people are turned off by even the word Christianity, because there's a lot more lasers than there are room lamps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I get why a lot of like their mentality is, there's some moral issues that are just worth standing your ground on. But I wish everybody would just hit the pause button and simply reflect on where our victory came from. Like it really does blow my mind that we teach a gospel and in the same breath we talk about cultural things that we need to be fighting about.
Right.
Like it's amazing. It feels like you've seen some clarity when you hear people talk about fighting for stuff in America or fighting for this rule or fighting for that or that's not our religion. Like that's not our faith, young man or young woman
and then that's also a part that if I've had to wrestle with, it's the political implications of what a Christian is. Like for a lot of Christians, their religion is political. Like it's the politics of it.
For sure. I came from it.
When you are told that America is a Christian nation, then you're like, I have to fight every war for America. It's nationalism. It's Christian nationalism. Like that's what it is. So for a lot of people, it's synonymous. For me, it's like, look, whatever the laws are, we're going to do what we're supposed to do. I don't have to fight them there, but at the same time, I will give my opinion. I'll vote and all that, but I won't destroy someone. Like you're seeing people like say some of the most wicked things about people and call people some of the most destructive things in the name of God. I don't think that's the method that he laid out in the scriptures on how we deal with conflict internally and externally. You know what I mean?
I mean, imagine, imagine a bunch of we'll pick on the Republicans right now, a bunch of Republicans surrounding this crazy radical liberal named Jesus, and they cut off his freaking ear. And what did Jesus do? Like seriously, it's like in the context of the dude's ear, what are you supposed to do?
Right. He's like, no, that ain't it. We ain't gonna fight it that way. Here, put the ear back on him. Relax. That's not how I'm moving. You know what I'm saying?
So as you get older, I'm sure your thoughts and even practices online probably change a good bit. I love watching you online because it's just so funny. You'll say something and it really is amazing, the sort of things that you get. It's mind boggling. And I love following people that will get that sort of shenanigans and not let it really lose their cool. But have you ever had to place any sort of rules in your head? Like, are there some stuff that you just don't touch because you can kind of feel it in your heart? You're like, I want to dive on this guy, so I better not do anything.
Well, again, for me, it's now, is it worth it? That's really where it's at. You know what I mean? Like, I've got to the point where I haven't seen a lot of fruit from arguing with anyone. That's why I don't argue anymore. If you'll notice for the past 2 years, I mean, really towards the, past two, I don't argue anymore. I don't really have this. Why? What is there to argue about? Like who you don't even know who you're arguing with.
Yeah.
Like it could be a person that has a 40-year-old guy's face in their Twitter profile, and it could literally be a 16-year-old kid. You know what I'm saying? From Germany.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like there's no reason for me to argue with anyone about anything. And I think some of that also has come from the confidence and like, I said what I said. Like, if I say it, I mean it. You don't have to agree with it. Fine. I don't care. There was this idea that I felt like I had to get the approval of people, right? Like, cause I'm an artist, you know, I survive off of my fans, right?
Yep.
So I felt like I had to have everyone to agree with me. And it's like, nah, I don't even feel that way anymore. I'm like, man, if I don't like something or if I think it's bad, that's that. But
for sure. All right. You're a very smart guy. So no more softballs. We're going to hit after 5 theological stuff before we close things out. And I'm going to throw these things up, let you handle them how you want. You can say pass if you want, you're in charge. How would you answer to your Muslim buddy? Why is Jesus the only way? What would you say to that Muslim buddy?
I would say that there's 3 Abrahamic religions: Judaism, there's Christianity, and then there's Islam. I would say that you have to do what makes the most sense to you. Yeah. To me, this is the research that I have, but at the end of the day, like, you have to do what makes the most sense to you. My prayer is that, you know, we're all accepted.
How could God send anyone to hell?
How could God send anyone to hell?
Yeah. I'm poking at Christianity right now.
The same way he could send anybody to heaven. I mean, it's his to give or take. That's it. That's even if, when we look at the scriptures, that's what we're talking about. Right. That Sheol is an actual place, or that Sheol is in a trash heap in the middle of Israel.
Right. No, for sure.
For us to, but if we're talking about a place of eternal damnation or eternal bliss, it's his to give and it's his to take. So I would say all we can do is our best. And I believe that if God is an honest God, like, I look at God like, well, I would say, with me being a human and how I treat my kids, and I consider myself a pretty decent father, I would not punish my kids for trying their best and for not understanding directions that I gave them. Right. Like, if they're trying their best and they're really trying their best, and I see that they're trying their best, I just don't see myself putting them in some sort of, I don't see myself punishing them for that. So I feel like, as far as that, that's why I wouldn't land.
Yeah. I don't know if you know my dirty little secret, but I can't come up with a better explanation of how I approach scripture. Believe that Jesus is Lord for sure, but I do believe he saves everyone. And it's interesting, once you read people that are way smarter than you, that have been researching and looking into this stuff for decades, and then you hear their perspective, and that's not the purpose of this show, so I won't go into it, but it's like, oh my gosh, that makes the most sense. And at the very least, if you do an honest study, you'll come out saying, okay, there's just as strong enough argument for God saving everybody as there is anything else. Like, if you're going to be honest, you have to come out with that one.
Yeah, I'm of the thought of, I don't know. Yeah. So all I'm gonna do is I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, right? Let alone in eternity. So I'm just gonna do the best with what I have right now and pray that it's accepted.
How does Derek Minor reconcile the evil and tragedy that this world is full of, from natural disasters to little boys and girls getting taken advantage of, human trafficking? When you sit down and when you hear these stories and when you watch the news, and then you also think to yourself, I believe in an all-loving God, how does that all fit together in your brain? Are you loving this, man? Are you loving this?
I've already, a lot of these questions I've already wrestled with.
Oh, I know. That's why it's so fun. Yeah,
so for me, it's like, humans cannot take their own responsibility off the table, right? So we can't say, like, how can I blame a man raping someone on God? That man made a decision to do something wrong. Therefore, he's wrong, right? As far as God is concerned in that situation, God protected us in the sense of saying, hey, guys, don't rape people. Yeah. But if humanity wants to do, that's literally the definition of sin, is God has a set of laws and mankind breaks those laws. That's what makes God upset. So God,
he's only upset because he wants what's best for us. It's not like, how dare you?
Yeah, he's like, yo, don't steal from people.
Right.
So if humans say, I don't care what you think, I'm going to steal from people. That ain't on God. That's on humans, right? Like, so then that even justifies the reason why God would send people to hell if there's a hell. That's why it was, because he's like, yo, I told y'all don't steal, don't kill, don't rape, don't pillage, don't oppress, don't do those things. If you want to do those things and you want to live that kind of life, this is the punishment that I've created for you. Yeah. There's a case for that, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, yo, in my sense, I'm like, we can't take the human responsibility out of this. Now, as far as natural disasters, I think at the same time too, like, look at what we do to the earth. There's famine a lot of times because we commercialize farming, right? And we overproduce the land. We don't give it a break. The Bible said we're supposed to have a year of Jubilee where we just let whatever grows grow, and people can come and eat out of those places and give the earth a rest. And we don't give the earth a rest. We do worse, right? So it's like, yo, yeah, there's more natural disasters. The weather's all effed up because we're not taking care of the earth. God already laid out a blueprint in the Bible. He laid a blueprint out on what we should do as far as taking care of the poor and all those things. But if mankind says, we got a better plan, then we get the results that we get. Yeah. And that's that.
As you get older, do you feel like your assurance about these sorts of things become desired? We all know that we're all just trying to figure this out. As you get older, is assurance less important to you? And for me, it's a big yes, but I think it's because I always tied assurance with safety in my faith and not going to hell.
Assurance in a sense of being assured of what?
Assurance of what you believe is corrort. The general creation, Jesus died, rose.
Look, all I know is that I'm doing my best right now to take care of my family and all that. All stuff that happened 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 billion eons ago. I don't know if the world was created in 7 days, 7,000 days, or 7 million years. I don't know. Like, I honestly I have no clue. And it's like, I think that's another thing that where Christians have really made a critical mistake. The point of the Bible, I don't even think the point of the creation story is to tell us how things were created. I think the point of the creation story was to explain the type of God that we have, that God did create the earth and he did set us up, but our disobedience is what puts us in these predicaments.
Yeah. And things without that guy ain't good.
Right. Adam and Eve's disobedience is what I think the core of the story is. Like, yo, God has a set of principles and he's for us. Yeah. And when we stick to his script and his plan, then that's when things work out for us. Yeah. When we deviate from the script, that's when things do not work out for us. I think that may be the moral of the story more than debating, was it a literal 6 days or 6,000 years? Yeah. Right. I think that is when I'm like, I don't even know if when Moses or the writer wrote Torah, I don't think that was the point. Yeah. But that's just me. I'm just guessing. I don't know. I think that's why I've landed. I'm open to debate. And if there's a better perspective than that, I'm down to listen.
You know, that may be a wise thing is anytime you're talking about the infinite, just start with I think. Like that's just a good policy to have, right?
I don't know.
That policy in place.
I wasn't there.
How do you process when friends or family of yours basically will use the lingo and say deconstructed fully out of Christianity? What does that do to your heart now?
I'm like, dang, homie. I mean, like for me, I'm like, it's crazy out there, and I can see why you would be so disappointed with this current structure of what Christianity is, that you would say, I have to throw everything out and figure out what's going on. And like, so I don't have any ill will I don't even have any fear. Like, it's just like, because if I'm like, at the end of the day, like, I don't think God is necessarily calling us to be in some sort of club. Yeah. I think God is calling us to love him. And for those that he loves, that's his work to do. That's not my work. That's my word. I can't save one person. It don't make any sense for me to be upset or anything at that person. I get upset.
Very Calvinist thing of you to say, but I'm tracking with you.
I get upset with you when you're an asshole. Like, that's when I'll get upset with you. As far as what you believe about God and an organized religion and all those different things, it's like, hey, that's your beliefs. And it's like, man, we could talk through them. I could tell you my perspectives. But at the end of the day, man, like, hey, you don't have to believe how I believe for us to be brothers and friends and family and all that stuff. It's like, nah, I love you. I start getting in your grill when you start taking advantage of people, when you start, taking advantage of your family, not treating your family correct. That's when you're going to get me in your ear, because you can control that. You can control that. That's on you, right? What you think about all these other things and you're still researching religions and all of that. I'm like, man, if God is who he say he is, then your research will lead you to see who he really is, right?
Yeah.
Which is, if he's the Almighty, your research will lead you there because the proof is there.
All right, last question. What does hope look like for you personally?
Hope looks like, for me, regardless of what we've done a minute ago, we have the opportunity to change the direction in this next second. Every new second, every new minute, every new hour is an opportunity for us to do something different that we can change. Like, that's what hope is. Hope is the ability to change. It's the ability to repent. It's the ability to look and say, you know what, I've been tripping. Let me change that. That's what hope is.
Love it, love it, love it. Give us a music update before we let you go.
I got a really crazy project that I've been cooking on.
Yeah, and, secret stuff?
Yeah, I can't tell about it yet. It's a little premature. But when we drop it, I feel like this is the best thing I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. Hey, off air, can you tell me who it's with or not?